evening, everybody. I think indeed it's fascinating. I'm happy that I was sitting when Mohit was giving his keynote address. Extremely impressed. Maybe we've contributed partly to his success in life. He was working with me at one point of time. I wish to take the courage and conviction of that. And he did a pretty good job of presenting the various agilities that a general counsel may require. But again, what I really feel is this. Firstly, we had a very nice, diverse jury panel. You've seen everybody on AV, so I'm not going to repeat everybody's name. So we've had Mohit, we've had Rajiv, we've had Jyoti Sagar, we've had Sudhir Mishra. Incidentally, Sudhir Mishra also at one small point of time worked with me and I signed his diary. But I've quite forgotten it, Sudhir. You've got to remind me about this again. Nilima Tripathi, Pramod Dubey, some on criminal law, some on corporate law, some on civil law. But of course, there was no GC, by the way, on the jury, Anurag. So we've got to consider. Mitra, yes, Mr. Mitra. Right. I forgot that name. Though he's worked with me a lot and I've sat with him a lot in various diverse. And that's a good one. So this is the second year. We started this process last year and I was there last year too. And indeed, it was delightful because I said, we are doing this for GC Anurag. And Anurag said, we've decided that we need to acknowledge this. And it was delightful because you're coming up with a new area, new expertise. And I think we go along Swami Vivekananda to say, it's good to be admired. It's good to be respected. It's good to be awarded. It's good to be recognized. There's no shame in that. It's good to be ambitious. Just don't be over-ambitious and don't be the Shakespearean overarching ambition. But be that as it may, we are all working here. An interesting statement that came across. If you're not a good surgeon, people think you're not a good doctor. So if you're not a lawyer, people think you don't know anything about law or the rule of law. But I think the GCs have changed that entire complexion. And that has been over the course of the last 2 decades. And I think there's been a dramatic change. Of course, we've had the internationalization, the opening up of the economy has led to that way forward to a major extent. So we've kind of got parity with other jurisdictions, including all the jurisdictions in the global field. But I think one of the major changes came around sometime in 2013, corporate responsibility. And I know that when Mohit was talking, I was just remembering in the Nirav Modi case, we weren't talking about GCs, by the way. We were talking about directors, but we were talking about red flagging. So you had to red flag an issue which came across your way. And I suppose that is somewhere down the line what the GC also, as was put in the presentation, would need to look at. That creates a liability that was a new one in the chapter of corporate responsibility. But indeed, the role of a GC and of a litigator, how different it is, I am not very, very sure. I think ultimately there is quite a synthesis between the two. Aside from what Rajiv said about not having the certificate of practice in the AV and not being able to present and not being recognized. And so maybe we should move the bar council, but maybe we shouldn't. Because there has to be a difference. And that is the difference. Because when you engage into an actual litigation, you may not be able to sit back and to collate, analyze, spearhead, and actually put that entire policy forward. So sometimes you need to step back. There has to be that distance. So I think Mohit had talked about 2 things, being either too close to management or being too away from management. So between both those options, somewhere down the line, you need this disengagement also from an active involvement. So whether you have solicitors, barristers, Queen's Counsel, lawyers, junior lawyers, senior lawyers, GCs, and a batch of lawyers, internal counsels, external counsels, the entire idea is actually to put together a scheme for the betterment of the organization. And I think today organizations need it. And you will find that funny. I'd like to compare GCs to something like the central agency in the government. Why I say so? You actually need, not that you necessarily manifest it, so this is on the lighter side. But having said that, you need to have a dedicated team unto a dedicated organization. And that, I think, is where the expertise of GCs ultimately is translated. And the second part is the synthesis of law and various other fields, which is delightful again. I like the word delightful. I think this is the 3rd time I've used it. But you have management, you have law, you have finance, and you have various other issues that you could put together. I mean, I could go into many more, but the principal one being these areas that you actually put together as a GC and then present a formula. But again, as I say, the difference between a lawyer, I know for a fact that when I ultimately advise, I argue, I advise, So I, as a lawyer, will advise on law. Mohit put up a lot of issues on ethical. Yes, that ethical part possibly applies a little more to GCs than to lawyers, because the ethics of law and presentation and litigation is its own. You defend your client, you give the best defense, it's for the court to decide. That is a Caesarean concept of ethics as was evolved. But for GCs, ethics, yes, today's world is different. You have ethics of environment, you have ethics of integrity, you have ethics of privacy. So you have this new evolution that we are actually dealing with. So we are bringing up that new ethics altogether. But a lawyer comparatively has slightly lesser area of ethics that they have to deal with in that sense, because you owe your duty to the client and to the brief. Of course, you don't need to know somebody is a murderer and then go and defend them in the court and say they are not, but possibly even then you have to. That's what the very typical conservative ethics says. Even if a murderer is there, you're supposed to give him a defense and say, I can defend you. And if the law thinks that he is, if it doesn't come under 302 or 304, so be it. But really, as I said, it's a mix and match. And I have enjoyed this transition and I've enjoyed the experience. And it was not difficult. I disagree with most of my jury co-chairs and co-members to one extent. Actually, when we sat across, when we looked at some of the names and the performance, a number of us said, and I'll not share who said what, but a number of us said, we know these people. We worked with them. We've seen them grow. Now, if you ask me about, let's say if I was going to be judging any of my jury chairs, most of them are younger to me, by the way, by now. So I've seen them. They worked with me. Some of them have been my juniors. I've seen you all grow. So it was not so difficult. Yes, the difficult part was everybody was so good. It was difficult to take out the top 100 from that. So that was an exercise. And it, of course, is an extremely engaging exercise. Business world seems to believe that rewarding people for their ingenuity, for their credibility, for their performance is something that is merited. And I respect and admire BW World for doing this and Anurag for his constant innovation. You need to find new avenues. And this is the world of today. We are looking for new issues. We are dealing with new issues. And incidentally, there, GCs, I must come across one other minor kind of discussion. I know we want to get on with the awards. So do I. I remember about 30 years back, not even between 25 to 30 years back, a whole team had come from US just to sit back and discuss with people as to what the potential telecom field was. Incidentally, a lot was said on telecom and a lot was said on scams. I was hearing Mohit. And believe me, today, the country is full of scams. It has been a series where we are still dealing with issues which have come, whether it is the Augusta Westland case, whether it is the Amazon Futura issue, which has taken over the world today. And we've had a new jurisprudence on emergency awards and whether we can have injunctions. Anyway, finally, the matter settled down for the time being. I'm sure it might resurrect itself, but we'll see. So it is really is this world that we are dealing with, where we have data privacy, we have the new laws that are being contemplated, you have criminal identification, you have DNA, you have scientific evidence, you have corporate responsibility, which is going up, you have non-penalization or decriminalization of various corporate responsibilities to say, bring them under civil head. I was there, in fact, and I was very happy. Believe me, I mean, the idea is you must make things function. But this is where all of us, and I was talking about the team coming in from US, my connect was, we need to start working on it. We need to develop these fields. We need to make our own thesis on the subject so that we can deal with it as it comes along, or we can contribute to it as it comes along, because there is immense potential at this point of time. And I think we have a very engaging team, if I might call it, or helm of affairs, of leaders in the legal field who are actually looking at it. So, I mean, for example, I would say that the Chief Justice of India has come up with so many new propositions, both on management, cooperation, not only the judgments that have come down, but the management of it. For example, the NIJC, which has been contemplated to manage the court and the litigation so that the judges can deal with law as such. But anyway, I've gone away, I know, to some extent from the GC role, but ultimately I believe it is all a synthesis, as I mentioned. So that's why I was talking in that context. But it is a pleasure to deal with GCs the way they are involved with their firms, with their organizations. And when they come to you, they are actually reflecting not only the stricto sensu technical legal part, but they are reflecting the organization's concern. But the last word, as far as a lawyer is concerned, I may say this. I, as a lawyer, what I would do, and I still do, I would advise my clients, my junior counsels rather, on the propositions, but ultimately I say the commercial decision is yours. You need to know your risks, but whether you take them or you don't take them, that choice is left to you. So the choice, ladies and gentlemen, all of you GCs, and by the way, the last, no, there's one more word. You have some diversity issue here. So two things. One, you only have about 40% people who are represented as GCs on executive boards. In India, by and large, and that also more on the multinational, you need to have GCs who are represented in the managerial and the directorial positions and be recognized there. Because ultimately you are taking that liability, as Mohit was also pointing out, you are taking that liability and at least definitely a very immediate, imminent responsibility. So therefore, if you're going to take liability, you must have equal status so you can have the liability also, for one. That is indeed a very important part that I think we need to deal with in GCs. The second, I do believe that we have about 23% women. So Manjari, you need to do something about this. And others, I'm sorry, I don't know everybody, but it is something that should be possibly looked at. I do believe there were some reports of McKinsey which said something about women in directorial positions actually performing better. But then there are several such reports and they go both ways. So it's like a glass is half full or not full. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the awards, which is possibly the greatest thing that is part of the ceremony, aside from, I believe public engagement with each other is what we need to do. So aside from awarding, BW provides us an opportunity to meet with each other. So thank you very much and we look forward. Thank you, Anurag.